Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Never Ending Referrals, with your MAPS coach, Steve Sleeter. Please note this webinar is being recorded, and you will automatically receive the webinar recording. If you have any questions for your coach, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar. Following the webinar, if you have any questions about today's call or coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That is FASTTRACK@kw.com. That's all for me. Steve, take it away.
Hey, thank you. Hey, welcome everybody to kind of our Never Ending Referrals open house. And so today our intention is to introduce you to our Never Ending Referrals group coaching program. 8 weeks of working on database mastery and to really make sure that you leave today with some implementable strategies, ideas that'll help you have more success with your database immediately. And so with that said, I want to jump in and kind of discover and really, I always ask, why does somebody come to a session on their database and what this opportunity represents? And this has become a much bigger topic today, as we know that we're getting into these discussions with Gary Keller about the tech-enabled agent and the technology that Keller Williams is building around Command and Keller Cloud and Kelly and the consumer-facing app that is going to be coming our way next year. We are really getting equipped, and yet you have to have an audience, and your audience, well, that's your database. And some of the reasons people come to Never Ending Referrals, and maybe why you're here, is that maybe chasing for sale by owners and expireds isn't your thing. Maybe the battle for search engine optimization isn't really working out, and you're going, there's got to be a better, more elegant way to generate the transactions I desire. And really, quite honestly, there's no better elegant way than to do it through the relationships that you already have. And that's what Never Ending Referrals is all about. And so as we get into this today, the other reason you might be here is you desire, well, frankly, to earn more money, to have a more abundant life. And I'd like to just start off with a little do some math. You're going, oh my God, did I really come to a webinar to do math? Yes, you did. And so the real opportunity here is to say, what does this represent? If I choose to get into mastery around this thing called a database, what's my financial opportunity with this? And so we're going to do a little analysis. And I'd like you to do some math. And so here's the formula. I'm going to put it up on the screen and do this with me. So I'd like you to, right here, write down how many are in your MET database, meaning the people that I know, that I have in a database that I would call, well, let's look at it this way. How many people do I know that know me that are reasonably local? They know me, I know them, they're reasonably local, excluding real estate agents. How many people do you have either in your MET database, or if you don't have it organized, would be in your MET database? And that's going to be A. Now, I want you to take A times 10%, and that's going to be B. So if you had 200 for A, B would be 20. It'd be A times 0.10. So let's do the math, because what we're really exploring here is what kind of financial opportunity you have from this thing called your database. And so A times 0.10, so if A was 200, B is 20. Now, in the next line, C, I'd like you to write down how many closings did you have in 2017 as a result of direct business from your database, meaning somebody in your database closed a transaction with you, or they referred you somebody that did. So how many transactions in 2017 was your database responsible for? And so we'll put that in C. Now I'd like you, for D, you're going to take B, the 10% return on your database number, subtract the units you closed, and let's see what the units gap is. So subtract C from B, and that's going to give you D. All these letters and numbers, my goodness. And then I'd like you to take D and multiply it times your average commission. So if we were to run down this, if I had 200, a 10% return, B would be 20. If I closed 12 from my database last year, B minus C would be 8. 8 times, say, 8,000 commission would be 64,000. And so here's what I'd like you to do. Now, just so you can get used to using the questions box, on your GoToWebinar control panel, you have a questions box. And I'd like you to go to the questions box and please insert your number for E. What was D times your average commission? And I'd be really curious to see what kind of opportunity is residing right now for you folks in your database. Oh my gosh, Kristen. Yeah, let's get a few more. So Kristen says $1.5 million. Wow. 320, says Dave. Okay, so Fred, you've got a negative, so that means that you're probably already at a 10% return on your database, which that's the minimum we're looking for, so that's good. Colleen says 120,000. Let's get some more input. Give us your number. Jeff, 37,000. Okay, so still a little opportunity. Fred says 800,000. Anna, $832,000 in opportunity sitting in your database right now. And so these are just a few examples. And so, here's 150,000, says Gary. And so when you look at this, these are the kind of numbers that we're frequently looking at. Jessica, 600,000. Wow. Yeah. These are the kind of numbers that we often see. And what it really tells us is there's a lot of latent opportunity in our database. Now, Fred, I'm gonna ask you a question here in a minute, and that is, let's take a look. And I want to ask you yet another question, because many times, Diana teaches us in bold, change the way you look at things. The things you look at, well, they change. And one of the things that I want to ask you is a crazy 19 million. Is that right, Greg? Wow. And one of the things that I want to ask you is this. And I'm going to ask you a crazy question. In fact, I just had lunch with this lady a few minutes ago. It's one of my agents in one of my market centers. And a few years ago, we were talking about her database, and she wanted to get better results from it. And Mary is, she's got 5 kids. Well, actually now 6 kids. She's very social, very engaged. And I'm asking her about her database one afternoon, and she says she's got 250 people in her database. And I'm thinking to myself, how's that possible? I mean, as many kids as she has, as much as she volunteers, the things she's involved in, I don't see how that can really be accurate. And so I'm going to ask you a crazy question. And this is all about helping you reveal maybe some opportunity you didn't know you had. And I'm going to ask you the crazy question that I asked Mary. I said, Mary, let's say you're throwing the 4th of July blowouts of all 4th of July blowouts in your town. And in fact, your favorite musician is playing it. Money was no object. In fact, you won a contest. You could have anybody play it. I said, who would you have play your 4th of July blowout? And she said, Beyonce. For me, it'd be Zach Brown Band. And so she says Beyonce. And I said, wow. Now, so let's say it's the most popular thing in town. Everybody decides to be at your 4th of July blowout. And yet the only way they get in is they come to the gate and they have to say, this is how I know Mary. And Mary would at least know who I was, whether it be an acquaintance, friend of the kids, or a relationship through the kids, through the spouse. Mary would know who I was, and I know Mary. I said, Mary, how many people, given that criteria, excluding real estate agents and keeping it reasonably local, how many will be at your 4th of July blowout? And she goes, well, Steve, it'd have to be at least 700. And I sat there quietly for a moment, and she goes, oh. And I said, you have how many in your database? She said, 250. And she had within about 3 weeks identified the next 200 that were going into her database to have those relationships develop. So here's the question I have for you. How many would be at your 4th of July blowout? And is it different than what you put in A when we did the calculation? How many would be at your blowout? Now, by the way, if you had significantly more in the questions box, just put in plus so many. So how many did you have over? If you were answering that question, honestly, people that know you, how many would it be? Would it be the same? About the same, says Fred. Okay, good. And so that means you've done a good job accounting for them. And this is one of those areas where I'd say there's about the same, Anna, so that means you've done a good job of accounting, for your database. Excellent. A little less, okay, all right. So then you got to look at the quality of your database. Does my database not represent really a solid core? All right, who are the people I need to reach out to make sure that I've got a good quality database? All right, so that being said, let's talk about this program, Never Ending Referrals, and I want to introduce you to a thing we call the 3% crisis, and it's really why this program exists. In September of 2008, Tony DeCello was asked to go represent the Shift book tour. The industry was an extreme shift. The real estate market was shifting. And Gary Keller said to Tony DeCello, please take Shift. And I was back up. We went to Chicago. And as Tony got to the conversation around database, he asked a question of the audience. He said, how many of you are touching your database 28 to 33 times a year via some method? And about 15% of the room stood up. He then asked the room to remain standing. He said, how many of you standing, at least 4 of those touches are over the phone or face-to-face? And the room went from 15% to 3%. And Tony and I, we coined this the 3% crisis. And I'm sure as you look around our industry and you look around the market center, that the database is one of the most underdeveloped business assets that we have in most cases. And so that's why we're here. And that's why this program exists, is to deal with this little crisis that we identified. Now, as you've been on some of the programs with Gary, you're beginning to realize, if you're watching the live streams, why the database is important and why relationships are going to be vital to our success as we get into the world of AI and everything else that we're dealing with as an industry today. So I want to walk you through something real quick. And I'd like to ask you in the questions box, what do these 3 have in common? So the travel agent, the video rental store owner, and the real estate agent. What do they have in common? So in the questions box, give me some thoughts. So if you think travel agent, so customers, okay. Offer a service, okay. They need clients to make money, absolutely. No product, so they don't have a physical product. It's they have a service, or in the case of video store rental owner, it's a rental service. Okay, anything else? Let's see what else we got. So people seeking specific, having a specific want or need. Okay, got it. So all these are true, and let me share with you what it is that they have in common for the context of this conversation. And you're going, well, that's not anything in common. And well, think about the travel agent. Expedia came along and disintermediated write down that word, disintermediation. And the travel agent was disintermediated by technology, as Expedia was a travel aggregator that allowed you to look at all the airlines and all available flights and make various selections. And then, of course, Netflix, well, the kings of streaming video, right? And Blockbuster really isn't anymore. I don't know of many video stores that still exist. And then, of course, the real estate agent, well, you've got this thing called Zillow. And what does these all have in common? Well, it's really a person. And you might want to write this name down. The name is Rich Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N, Rich Barton. Now, Rich was the founder of Expedia, disintermediated the travel agency. Rich is on the board of directors for Netflix. And Rich also founded a little company called Zillow. And so when you look at this, you see this pattern of disintermediation or disruption that takes place. And of course, the buzz today is that our industry is going to get disrupted. And of course, Gary would say, wait just a minute, because we're at a very fortunate place. I mean, we have so much data at Keller Williams. We've got the strength of y'all's relationships. And well, real estate's a little bit different animal. And so there's been a lot of fear around this whole thing of disruption. And I'm going to share something that Gary Keller shared with me a number of years ago. In fact, it was during the original .com boom. I happened to be a team leader at the time for Gary Keller. Gary Keller was my operating principal. I was the team leader at the Austin Northwest Market Center. And during that initial .com era, Gary and I were having a conversation one afternoon, and it was around this. And you'll want to write these down. We had a conversation around commodities. And for where our industry is right now, honestly, this could be one of the most important things for you to understand. And it's going to dictate a lot of your strategy of how you approach your business, your relationships, is by really understanding this as we come into this, big data, artificial intelligence, more digital world. So as we're talking about e-commerce, we had a conversation around this thing called commodities. And Gary essentially says, there's really 4 commodity types, if you will. There's a standard commodity. Let's start at the bottom. He said there's a standard commodity, and that would be like books, sundries, CDs, that was the real popular thing at the time. And he says, Amazon is going to really do well because e-commerce with a standard commodity is an easy thing to do, because a book is a book. Whether you get it brick and mortar, it's the same book. A CD, same CD. If you get it from a trusted online source versus go to a brick and mortar store. And so that's an easy e-commerce deal. And then we talked about a thing called choice commodities. And we talked about hotels and airlines. And he said, an airline is an easy e-commerce deal as well, because you're really just picking your destination, your departure point, days that you choose to travel, class of service, and then you go through and you have to make a few choices, click the button, done. He said, I see that being a strong e-commerce platform for those kind of commodities as well. And then we got into a conversation around custom commodities. I don't know if there's any golfers out there. If you're like me and you kind of struggle with your golf game, it's obviously got to be the clubs, right? It's not the golfer or the golf swing. It's got to be the clubs. And so I'm going to go get a custom set of ping irons, and let's say they're $2,300. And I can go to the Ping website, and it has a measuring guide, an ordering guide, all the procedures to go through to take the proper measurements for the proper hosel lie, for the right shaft stiffness, for the right grip, for the right club face type for you. And I can go through and I can take all these measurements, send it to them. They'll build me a $2,300 set of golf clubs and ship them to me. I don't know if I trust myself enough to get that nailed just right for that big of an investment, to leave it to my own abilities around something that I've never done before. I'm probably, if I'm a hobbyist, maybe 3% of hobbyists would, and yet the rest are probably going to go to a golf shop or a pro shop where somebody is skilled in that area and I can get some advice and some guidance to make sure that I make a good investment, that I don't waste my $2,300. And Gary said, we're not even to real estate yet. He said, real estate is a unique commodity. And in most cases, none of it is alike. Even in a condo tower where you got similar floor plans, they all have their own finish or view or certain attributes that might make them distinct and unique in some cases. And so, I'm sharing this information one day with a group. In fact, we're in Lake Conroe, Texas, and we're overlooking Lake Conroe and beautiful waterfront homes. And we're in an arena ballroom where we're having this gathering. And I share with them how fortunate you are to deal in this waterfront property, this unique product. And this product is completely unique. Everything is different. And so we were having this conversation. Let me just check the questions box. Somebody else said they lost connection. Just put in yes if you're hearing us okay, to make sure we didn't lose connection. Okay, looks like we're okay. Everybody's a good yes. Okay. All right, we're good. All right, so back to commodities. And so here became the conversation. Here's the good news. You guys deal in a unique commodity, this thing called real estate. It's very unique. Everyone tends to be a little bit different. And so we kind of had a kind of protective layer around us because we deal in this type of product called a unique or a custom commodity. Here's the battlefront. The battlefront right now isn't whether real estate will stay a unique commodity. The battlefront is, will you as the real estate agent be that unique or custom commodity? And to do that, you're going to have to create an experience for the people in your database that positions you as the trusted advisor, as the local real estate expert. And failure to do that, it means that they may go somewhere else because they may think that, well, there's nothing unique about what you have to offer. And I can get the same information from Zillow. I can get the same relationship and carrying from some other portal, realtor.com or Redfin or whoever it might be, that it's just a standard or choice experience. And so with that in mind, let's dig into what does this mean to be in a position where you are that trusted advisor. And Gary talks about this in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, page 96. And it's a little thing called Functionary versus Fiduciary. And so this whole program is about how do we put you in a position so that your database, your people that you have a relationship with, begin to listen to you. They trust you. They ask you questions when it comes to real estate versus relying on some functionary website, some functionary person who maybe doesn't have the high caliper perspective or work ethic or responsibility that you might have. And so if we look at the functionary side, this is the battle. There are companies out there today that want to just simply turn you into a functionary being that will work for the lowest amount of pay possible. And so if we look at the first 4 points under functionary, we say it's low level, it's low relationship. That's not good. Assumes little responsibility and uses low skill. Look at the bottom 3 under functionary. Follows rules and procedures, is replaceable, is minimally paid. Ouch. Watch the replaceable. Anytime you become replaceable as your people in your database, you're not going to get paid well. Now let's go to fiduciary. The fiduciary side, it's the first. Let's look at the first 4. High level, high relationship, accepts high responsibility and masters high skill. Look at the bottom 3. Uses judgment and intuition, particularly rated to an individual because you know what's important to them. You've built that relationship. As a result of that, you're irreplaceable and you're highly paid. So right now, as we do this battle in this industry to decide who's going to be the functionary and who is going to be the fiduciary, Gary says this really well in his live streams. He says what would big tech would love to do is have the technology become the fiduciary and the agent become the functionary. And of course, the way Gary's building it for us and his team, Josh, the way he's building it for us is to have us maintain a fiduciary position and have the technology be the functionary. So there is a common enemy that we are battling right now in this industry. Does anybody know what that common enemy is? Put it in your questions box. And this is sometimes how we get really united, is we got to figure out who the common enemy is and we got to attack it. And what do you think that is? So I hear Anna says AI, artificial intelligence. Okay. All right. Some say Zillow. It's not Zillow, actually. Others, bad real estate agents. There's one. Well, here's what I would say it is. I think it's us. I think it's you. I think it's me. It's us not taking a stand and really developing those relationships and becoming that fiduciary resource. So if you choose to take control of this industry, if you choose to remain in that fiduciary position, you have no choice other than to really add value to people and add value to relationships. And it means the database has got to be at the core of your business. And so let's get into that specifically and how we can do that. See, Gary has told us, he said, your goal is to be the economist of choice for your local real estate market. He said it's your professional duty to provide them perspective. And so we think about that, and here's the thing that I think gets in the way of so many of us really having success with this. And if you've taken the 6 personal perspectives, you're familiar with this graphic that I have before you right now. And it's the process of moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful. And I want to go to this point of as we go through and maybe working with our database, you see this image of a ceiling, the fundamental ceiling of achievement. And when we hit a ceiling in our business, we usually get to experience a certain kind of self-talk. It's often the self-talk of disappointment. So you see this line right underneath the ceiling that's zigzagging down, and it has the word disappointment. And the self-talk around that is usually something like, I thought this would be easier. I don't understand why this is so difficult. And if we're not careful, that leads to the next step, which is resignation. And resignation, we get into just acceptance of less. I guess this is as good as it's going to get. And if we're not careful, that leads to greener pastures, and I'm going to go start something new. And often I start that something new with a lot of excitement and energy, that entrepreneurial energy, and yet the same ceilings show up in my life because I didn't deal with what I had to do to make a breakthrough in my life or my business. And so I want to walk through this thing called a purposeful style. And so to create the breakthrough, it requires purposeful. And I'm going to share with you something Gary Keller shared with me. You've probably not heard this before. And he said that the mistake that many people make is they believe that surely with focus and accountability to my goals that I can make happen whatever I desire to have happen. So if you look under purposeful style, you see focus at the top and accountability at the bottom of those 5 key points to a purposeful style. And Gary said this. Here's what he said to me. He said, focus and accountability, Steve, are the bookends. He said, it's what's in the middle that matters. He said, it's understanding your strategic options, your models, your systems, and then bringing focus and accountability to that. Now, what do we mean by options? Somebody on this webinar who has a database of 26 people because you just moved to a community is going to have completely different strategic options than the person who's highly social, lived there all your life, and has 600 relationships. And so the options are different. What are the models that are proven to work to give a 10% or better return on a database? And then what systems have to be in place to make that happen? So that's what Never Ending Referrals does. I'm going to take you through some of those systems right now and some of those options. And yet to have you understand, that's what comes first, getting clear on that, and then bringing the focus and the accountability to the options, the models, and the systems, so that you have a purposeful business as it relates to this thing we call, well, your greatest business asset. It's your database. And so let's jump in. And so as we jump into this, first, and you know this from Bold, there's 4 laws to the database, and they're not suggestions, they are must. And law number 1 is you have to build and organize it. 2, you feed it daily. 3, communicate with it systematically. And number 4, you work all the business that comes from it. So we're going to go through right now and here's the end goal of Never Ending Referrals. The number 1 is to have this work for somebody with any kind of behavioral style. Hang on a second, guys. My dog is on a chew toy. There you go. Crazy things happen. This program's designed to work for any behavioral style. You know, this is the KPA. We talk about the assertive, the sociable, the structured, and the study. And the thing to understand about behavior is we all have things that get in the way behaviorally. The high assertive doesn't like small talk. The high social fears rejection. People aren't going to like me. The study, you know, doesn't want to be a bother to anybody. And the structure just says, you know, I'm not a people person, and I don't want to have to deal with, you know, all these relationships. And so every behavior can have what I would call a limiting belief or a hang up around success with the database. And this program's been designed so that it works for any behavioral style. And the way we do that is we take those 4 laws and we're going to build what we call your customized GPS or 145. If you've taken many of the classes, you've heard of a thing called the GPS or the 135. Because there's 4 laws, we've just made it a 145. So let's talk about the 1. The 1 is the stated goal of getting you a 10% or better return on your database and having you build it by 250 or more over the course of the next 12 months. And we do that by developing 5 or more strategies around the 4 laws. And so you'll note, build and organize. What are the 5 strategies that are right for you? Feed it. What are the 5 strategies that are going to help you grow it? Communicate systematically. What are the 5 strategies that are right for you, and so on. So let's break into some of those strategies. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is a little thing we call DTD2. And DTD2 is an action plan around communication. As a Bold coach, about 4 years into Bold, I had a number of students that were repeat students in the Bold room. They'd been through Bold several times. And in session 4, when we get into, or step 4, when we get into this conversation around the 33 touch, there's this slide that says personal telephone calls. Call 2 letters of the alphabet a week. You talk to your contacts 4 times a year. 4 letters of the alphabet a week, you talk to them 8 times per year. And I'm going, you know, that's really an elegant little system. Now let's go back. Remember, Tony asked the question in Chicago. He said, how many of you are actually having a conversation with them? And it was 3%. And I said, here's an elegant way to chunk it down and to make sure you have a systematic way of talking to everybody once a quarter. And I asked the room, those that have been through Bold multiple times, you've seen this before, how many of you are doing this? And I had three sessions of Bold, about 80 persons apiece, over the course of 3 days, and I asked it of each room, and nobody was doing it. And I realized that the reason they weren't doing it was a conversation that wasn't happening around them routinely. And so we developed a little thing in our market center we call doing the database too. So one of the things that we introduce you to in Never Ending Referrals is this concept, and of simply having an elegant way of dividing your database into 13 chunks, which is your calling schedule, it's your maintenance schedule, It can be a feeding schedule. There are a lot of ways you can work it. And we broke it down in ways that we were able to create a theme around. So the B&E week would be the master of your database. And that was a conversation we'd have around our agents. The I&Q week would be, brilliant agents work their database. You have high IQ. And we were adhering to that bold law that Diana says people grow in the conversations you have around them. And so we started this as simply a way to chunk down that idea of calling your database on that schedule. And this is where it started. And it's still the foundation of Never Ending Referrals today. And yet we've taken it much further. We're going to share with you how we've integrated social media with this. And I'm going to take you through that actually today. And so as we get into this, let's talk about building your database. So now that you have this concept of DTD2, and I'm going to take you through each of the 4 laws and give you one concept from Never Ending Referrals that you can go put into place right now. And so when it comes to building your database, well, whoops, the M disappeared here. The CRM workout would be, we'd have you go into your CRM and create those DTD2 groups. And once you have your DTD2 groups, it's easy to organize it, access it, call it on a schedule. And so we've got tech tutorials that take you right through how to do that. Currently, that is in eEdge. We do have a feature called Command Central that as Command comes online, we'll be substituting those tutorials and putting them up on the Facebook page for you. And yet going ahead right now, starting in eEdge, because it all imports seamlessly into Command. And so you won't miss a beat. And right now, that's what we have. And so we take you through how to set up your CRM DTD2 style. And so we take you through step by step. We have tech tutorials, videos. They're going to take you through how do I set my CRM up to work with this simple system. Now let's get into Feed It. This is a strategy that frankly is going to blow you away a little bit. And if you're on this webinar, you're going to be receiving an email later with the script I'm about to walk you through. I'm going to give you the script. Now write this down, however. So you don't have to outline the script, and yet I want you to write this down. This is what I would call, it's baseball playoff season, so I'm going to call this a triple play. And we call it the 5-star approach or 5-star script. And I almost hate using the word script because what we really teach you to do is how to create a dialogue with the people in your database, not script them. And yet, for lack of a better word, it is a script. It is a dialogue that we teach you to have. And so here's how the way the 5-star script goes, and I'll model it for you. So I know we have Anna on here. So Anna, I'm reaching out to you. And I call Anna, say, hey, Anna, it's Steve, your favorite realtor. Hey, I was thinking about you and was wondering if you could help me with a little project we've been working on. And as you can imagine, Anna, we've got people that are moving in from all over the country, into the Austin area. And, well, honestly, they've left all their service providers and the people that they go to for services behind. And we're building this directory for our clients and friends, and I'd love to share it with you when it's done. And yet I needed your help. And I'm just curious, who have you had a 5-star experience with in the last maybe 2-3 weeks? Who really just exceeded expectations? And Anna, let's say you said, well, we just hired a new landscaping company, 3 Trees Landscaping, and they've been amazing. They do more than what you expect them to do. They're always neatly dressed, and they leave things, neater than they found it. And I go, well, wow, they sound fantastic. And I said, well, who would be your contact at 3 Trees Landscaping? And Anna gives me her contact, and I go, would it be okay if I used your name when I called Larry? And Anna says yes. And so now I have a warm business-to-business lead that Anna has provided me with. And now I go on with the dialogue. So, well, thank you for helping me with that, Anna. And maybe there's another introduction you can make for me. One of the things we've been having a lot of requests for is some of our people have been asking about tax preparers or CPAs. A lot of people filed extensions. They were selling houses or whatever in this last year, and it's tax time. And And honestly, I got to tell you, Anna, I don't have a great CPA. Would you have a 5-star introduction you could give me in that area? And Anna says, well, I really don't. And I say, no problem. I know it seems to be kind of a rare animal. And I said, well, let me ask you this, Anna. When I find that great 5-star relationship, that somebody recommends, would you like me to connect you with them? And Anna says, well, that would be great. And so I said, I'll make it a point when I find that right person to connect you guys, and then you'll have one as well. And I sure appreciate that. Hey, so Anna, thank you for helping me with this little project. As this comes together, I'm going to be sharing this with y'all on how to access it through my app, and also a directory on our website, and also a written directory that I'll send out to you guys. And Anna, while I've got you, is there anybody you know that we can help right now that might have a need to buy, sell, or possibly invest in real estate? Okay, wonderful. Well, hey, thanks for taking a moment to think about that. Anything else I could do for you? And Anna says, no, just give me that referral when you find a good CPA. You got it. And I'll be sure to call Larry and let him know that you passed the name along. Now let's talk about that conversation and why I call it the triple play. Now, number one, I now have a warm business-to-business lead. And as we cover in session 3 of Never Ending Referrals, one of the quickest ways to build a database is business to business. Number one, they answer their phone. Number 2, you are the person who is bringing new people into this town. And when you position yourself correctly, they see you as that person and they want to know you. Every business, just like you, is in the lead generation business. And if a new relationship might put them in touch with new people moving into the market, they're going to want to know you. And so now you have a warm business-to-business lead. You're going to call Larry at 3 Trees Landscaping. You can do a pop by. You can get to know him, put him on an 8x8, and launch him into your campaigns, and you have a new relationship. Now, at some point, you're going to find that CPA relationship. And so now you get to reach out to the CPA. And by the way, you probably have as many as 3, 4, 5, 6 people who said they would love a great CPA. And so you go to that CPA, with referrals in hand. So think about what's going to happen then, the law of reciprocity showing up in a very big way. So here's what I would say to this. I call it triple play because you get a warm business-to-business lead. You get to add value to your database in creating a directory. You may get a second business-to-business lead in the category you requested, whether it be CPA or something else. And then when you identify the CPA, you have warm leads for them, which builds the relationship, builds value in the relationship immediately. So it's a win-win-win opportunity, and I'll send that dialogue out to you guys for being on the webinar today. So what's your email? Maps Coaching will be sending that out, and that'll come to you down the road. So that was a feed it strategy. We're feeding it business to business. Now let's go to communicate. Now communicate, let's talk about this little tactic. You want to write this down. CARE. It's a little acronym, and it stands for Connect, Alert, Refer, and Engage. And so one of the things that we'll take you through is social media strategy with your database. And we're going to show you how you might organize your social media here in just a moment. And yet Connect, Alert, Refer, and Engage helps us think about, how do I want to engage? What kind of conversation? If I'm in Florida right now, in the panhandle of Florida, if I am in Georgia, southern Georgia, I might want to be alerting people in my social media to resources and needs, the people that are battling with the hurricane that just made landfall. I might be referring them to government resources, or after the fact to resources that are reliable and dependable, because all the scammers show up in times of crisis. And engagement in this case is going to be meaning really connecting them people up. And so it's a way to help me think about how I engage my database via social media. Now, another tactic around social media is we think about Facebook, for example. and you can do this with LinkedIn and other resources, is how do I bring DTD2, this concept of a 2-letter group for every week for 13 weeks, gets me through the alphabet. 13 times 4, by the way, is 52. So I get my elegant way of contacting my database 4 times a year. And what's a way I can do this with social media? So Facebook allows you to do custom friends list. They just changed the way it looks. It looks slightly different than this right now, and yet you're going to go to friends list. And so you're going to go to friends list, and once you go to friends list, it's going to give you the option to create list. And you'll simply set up your DTD2 groups there. F and G is one of our groups, feeling good. H and V, D and O, doing the database too, B and E. And so you set up the 13 DTD2 groups, and then you populate them. You add the members of the people in your social media that fit into that group by last name. Now, here's what this allows you to do. Once you have these custom friends list, and you've already have some that are populated for you by Facebook, you're simply going to go to custom friends list. You'll create these. As you go to populate them, and we've got tutorials and everything on how to do this, as you populate them, what will happen is you can now, on your feed, choose to see just one group. So let's say if this next week is going to be my B and E group, and I'm going to go ahead and just choose to see the feeds of my B and E's, and the only thing that's going to show up in my feed is anybody who's in that group. So everything else, the clutter goes away. And I'm more likely to see what they're actually posting. It gets through all the algorithms. I see what that group is doing. And so I can do a little creative social media stalking. If you're the type of person, you like that, okay, Jessica, you can do a little creative social media stalking. A lot of us, like to have a reason to call. And if I desire to have a forward conversation, and we get into this in depth in session 2, a forward conversation around family or friends, occupation, recreation, dreams, sometimes I can cheat a little bit. And when I make the calls, I was thinking about you. I saw you on Facebook the other day that your daughter was playing college volleyball. How excited are you about that? And, how's that experience? And you can launch the conversation with something that's important to them because it was already there in the feed. Now, what it's also going to allow me to do is I can send a broadcast message to just that group that I'm calling this week or next week, maybe alerting them to the fact that I'm going to be calling and I've got an important message. And I can set all that up. I can do, one-on-one messages and easily open up messaging for the folks in that group, and I can cut, paste, and I know that group is going to be the one I'm contacting this week, so I can queue things up with my DTD2 custom Facebook friends list. So this is a way you can bring social media into organizing your social media part of your database, if you will, in a way that's congruent with the rest of your database. And so it makes that whole social media thing a little easier. Let me go to the questions box for a second. When you alert them, do you use public or friends of friends? I think there's a lot, you could tag people. There's a lot of different ways you could put that. I'm not sure I completely understand your visibility wise. Okay. I think you can do either way. If you have them in your list, Kristen, the question is, do you alert them to use public? They're talking about privacy settings. You got it. I think you can use public. If they're in. See, here's the issue. If they're in your DTD2 group, and it's not on the group. It's a list. Be clear. This is not groups. This is list. And you create a list. You chose who went in there. Facebook didn't create it for you. It didn't sort it out. And if I'm getting to your point, Kristen, is that these are people you created. So you're going to broadcast it to everybody that's in that particular group. I think that answers your question. So let's keep moving here. I want to work through this and take the best of our time. So you'll have your list that you then populate. Now, they did make a little change. You were able to bulk populate this in the forward, and you could just click, 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 click. When they just made some changes, it's not allowing that right now. So it's a little tedious. You might get somebody to help you with it. We're hopeful that the bulk add, where I could just click on the two bests here, the Brad, the Brian, the Brian, and just bulk add these in a few clicks. Right now, it's one at a time, unless there's a workaround on that I haven't found yet, and yet we're working on that. So let's go back to work it. So the last of the 4 laws, work the database. One of the things that you're going to create in this process is you're also going to categorize your database. And there's a bucket, we call it your network met group. These are people that, well, they know you. They wouldn't necessarily do business only with you. They might do business with you. Allied resources are people in the industry that you work with, your lenders, your title people. Your advocates, these are people that love you, wouldn't do business with you without you. They never would use anybody else. And then core advocates, the same as an advocate, they're just uniquely placed to send you lots of referrals. Now let's talk about this thing called a nurture. This is where the work it part of it really comes into play. And one of the most vital things that we'll be working on through the program is your follow-up system. When you work your database vigilantly this way, DTD2 style, and you're consistently working it every week, you create a stream of what we call nurtures. These are people that for whatever reason, you might call them a warm list, a pipeline person. You might put them on your CGI pipeline tool, would be a place that they would go. And a nurture somebody that for whatever reason cannot do something today and yet intends to do something in the not too distant future. And something you might want to write down, and this is the research that Gary and his team have done for Millionaire Real Estate Agent 2. The research says that 70 to 80% of the listings taken by top agents and buyers sold by top agents are coming from follow-up. So they weren't converted necessarily on the first conversation. The first conversation launched the relationship, and it was through follow-up that ultimately the decision was made to go ahead and take action. And the beauty is in the follow-up. So one of the things we'll focus here is you're creating that bucket of nurturers who are going to be the 70% or so of your opportunities when you're really doing this, building a foundation for referrals. Because see, ladies and gentlemen, the game today is no longer repeat business. The consumer is saying they're going to stay in their home about twice as long as they did 15 years ago. The average consumer is saying 9 to 11 years they'll be in their home. The current cycle is about 8.2 years, and yet they're saying 9 to 11. Are they forecasting the future? Or are they over optimistic? Hard to know. And yet the game we're playing today is referrals. And the referrals you get aren't always ready to act right away. And so we go through some strategies for building that bucket of nurtures. So here's what we cover in Never Ending Referrals. And as we begin to wrap this up, and I'm going to tell you how you can get a discount on Never Ending Referrals and join us starting October 18th. And I believe we're at 11 a.m. Central Time, I believe, if I've got that correct. Setting the foundation. So step one, we go through just really getting a foundation for where are you in your database, what are the possibilities. Session 2, we go through your behavioral style, and we go through the scripts and the dialogues and the strategies that allow anybody with any behavioral style to have successful dialogue and conversations with their database. And we'll give you the dialogues and we'll give you the scripts. In session 3, we get into business to business and social media. Session 4 is an interview, live interview with the Daily Group out of Baltimore, Maryland, who does 150 to 200 transactions a year using client events at the foundation of their system. In session 5, we get into what we call the 7 to cement, or the 8 by 8. It changes names frequently. And it's how do you launch new relationships so that you build mind share? And that's really a marketing session. It's how do you blast your way into the mind of the consumer so you go take that place so that when they think of real estate, they think of you. Next session, we get into the local expert, how to become the local expert and trusted advisor. Session 7, we get into the other database, which is geofarming, because it's a great feeding strategy. You can build nets that way. And then, of course, lastly, we get into harnessing the power of video and bringing this all together. Now, if you'd like, you can go to getmapsnow.com and you can find Never Ending Referrals and register right there. And again, we start next week on Thursday, October 18th. And I believe we're at 11 a.m. Central Time. And with the $249, that's the regular price. You sign up today, you get 15% discount. So that means you take like $32, $33 off of that, and you get the 8 sessions to join us for Never Ending Referrals. So I trust today we gave you some ideas, some tools to think about. What is my system to make sure that I make those all important phone calls? How do I make sure that I become that standard commodity? Get Maps Now is the link, Kristen. Getmapsnow.com. It's on the bottom of your screen right there. If you go to getmapsnow.com, and yes, this session is recorded. Starting Bold tomorrow. Great add-on for Bold, Greg. Yes, and we run this pretty consistently. If you're going to be there on Thursdays, all sessions are recorded, by the way, so you can go back and listen later. So thanks for bringing that up, Greg. Appreciate that. This is setting the foundation, and really, we don't have a choice today. We all have to put in motion some kind of plan for success with the database. And it's more than just waiting for the technology, because the technology needs an audience. And you have to build a powerful philosophy around how you work a database, how you build value for a database. What does it mean to be the local expert and trusted real estate advisor, and how do you do that? Okay, you're on a phone app. There's no link. The Maps is going to be sending out a link. If you've been on here, you'll get a link on how to register. So no worries if you can't access that right now. And again, Get Maps Now, GetMapsNow.com, and just go to Never Ending Referrals, and it'll apply the discount, and you'll be good to go. All right, any questions? Happy to, yep, Bruce, all are recorded. And let me see. It is 8 consecutive weeks. Bruce, the exception being Thanksgiving week, we skip. So you guys will be eating turkey, watching football on Thanksgiving week, and we will not have a session that week. You're welcome, Jessica. Who do we indicate as the who helped you enroll in the program? Good question. Pick anybody. Maps coach, Bold coach. That's fine. Yeah, I think the Get Maps Now is the website that's associated with Bold. Yeah, or you can put none. Bold coach or none of the above. Okay, that's okay, Anna. Yeah, you don't have to select anybody, so you got it. All right, any other questions, thoughts? Love an aha or two. Feel free to throw an aha on the screen. All right, Kristen Gray, find the link. Just, any web browser, getmapsnow.com. It'll get you there. Got it. You got it. Great, you got it. All right. It should automatically apply the 15% discount, Bruce. If not, look for the other link that Maps will send out following up this, and yet that link has always been a 15% discount link. So that's why I want to make sure you had that when I knew it would apply the discount upon checkout. So it'll give you the 15%. All right. Any other questions? Hey, thank you so much for investing part of your day, guys, to look forward to let's see, here's Anna. Looking forward to balancing connection with our database to grow our nurtures in future business. Amen. You got that right. Aha, Facebook list and heads up to call. Yeah, you got it. Can give you a list of letter groups to divide database into. Yeah, we've got that all part of the very first session. We've got all the 13 groups that we recommend, and we give you the schedule that other people around the nation are following, and that's part of how we have that set up for you. That'll be included with your first lesson. All right. Perfect. Hey, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with me today on Never Ending Referrals, and have a great week. If you're in line of the storm, be safe, and we'll see you soon. Take care.